Okay, I'm here with John Caroll, wrestling coach. TJ Zito, how you doing today, coach?
Man, I'm doing pretty good. And that title, and that still confuses me when I hear that, hearing those words, head coach TJ Zito. That still kind of gets me.
Of course, of course. Well, let me start out by asking you. Well, tell about your wrestling background.
Okay, well, I actually wrestled, and we're going to go back old school here. I'm going to call it Barry High School. And you people that are from the Birmingham area, you'll remember Old Barry before we became Hoover High School. So I was the first graduating class out of Hoover High School. I wrestled for Barry High School. I wrestled for Hall of Famer Duke Shimento. He's going into the Wrestling Hall of Fame this year. Was going in last year because of COVID. We had to delay a year. And also Scott Rohr. And if you guys don't know Coach Rohr, that's our Minnesota connection, man. That's our J Robinson connection right here. He was the assistant coach at Old Barry, and when Coach Shimento retired, he took over. So I actually had a chance to get really strong training at Hoover High School, Barry High School, and wrestled 103 twice, actually, freshman and sophomore, 113 and 119 my senior year over there, and just had a tremendous time wrestling. Always loved the sport, was always a big supporter. Was away from the sport for a little while. And then when I was at graduate school at the University of Alabama, I actually volunteered with Tuscaloosa County High back when they were starting a program. And I got a chance to volunteer at a coach, Jamie Griffin. And I don't know if you've ever met that guy, man, but he is tremendous. And he gave me a different outlook, a different way to look at kids. And I love the way that he started his program and how he coached his kids up. And now his son, Patrick, is actually the head coach over there at County High. So I'm always going to be a County High fan. I'm always going to be a Hoover fan. Even Barry Middle, because they still carry on the name of Barry High School. So that's kind of my wrestling background, if you will, of how I got involved into the sport.
So you got to wrestle under Coach Shimento and Scott Royer at Barry. What was kind of that clash? How did that kind of work out?
And you had to be there. That's the best thing I can say. And I was just joking with Coach Rohr yesterday. Coach Rohr is heavily involved with the Skulls Wrestling Club. And I was just joking with Coach Rohr about this last night. Coach Duke Shimento, amazing, awesome coach, a very brutal style, if you will. He was, very imposing, impose your will on the other wrestler kind of style, old school East Coast. He was from up in New York. And he actually wrestled scholarship down at Auburn back when the SEC had wrestling. So he was very much that old school East Coast style. And then Coach Rohr coming in, you got to remember, this was a young Coach Rohr, fresh out of college, 22 years old, fresh out of NCAAs. He had just lost to Brands. So, man, he was just full of just passion and energy and was wanting to get involved and transform Alabama wrestling, if you will. And, so he brought that Jay Robinson style in. He brought that, if you want to call it Midwestern style to us. And it was such a clash. But we had that old brutal East Coast style, and then we had this new style coming in, running legs, running stacks, and hearing about tech falls for the first time. And it was kind of a clash in the wrestling room between the coaches. I think they clashed on styles a little bit. There's times when I can remember walking up to the line. I wrestled 103, so there's times I was walking up to the line, and Shimento would be like, "All right, baby, off the whistle, you're going to throw a headlock." And I look over at Rohr, and he's like, "No." And I remember stepping up to the line, stepping back, stepping to the line, looking at the coaches and being confused. But man, what a fun time. And I learned so much from both of them. And that's kind of cool because I got to kind of see both influences. And now that I'm volunteering as a coach, being able to draw on both is excellent because they both were great in their own way. And having them both in the same room, we laugh at things now, but looking at the knowledge I got to learn back in the day, man, it was great.
Awesome. So, you started up John Caroll Wrestling again. What kind of drove you to do such a thing?
I think it's insanity, honestly. You've got to be a step crazy to do what we did. So my son was in Hoover schools, and all of my family went to John Caroll. I did not go to John Caroll, but all of my family did. I'm full-blooded Italian, and being Catholic is just part of it. It's not allowed to be Italian and not be Catholic, right? And my wife went to McGill, which is the Catholic school down in Mobile. So there's always been a lot of family pressure to put him into Catholic schools. And so we transferred him over to Prince of Peace when he was in seventh grade. Because we did it in seventh grade, you've got the transfer rules and you got to follow the AHSA guidelines and all that. But one of the first things I did is I walked over to John Caroll before we put him into Prince of Peace Middle. And I just introduced myself. Hey, how you doing? My name is TJ Zito. My entire family is up on the wall going to school here, and we're transferring my son. I'd like to ask some questions about the wrestling team. And the athletic director is Ronald Steele. And you may remember Coach Steele. He played basketball not only at John Caroll, but for University of Alabama. Was All-American, an amazing basketball player. And he's like, oh, man, we haven't had wrestling around here since about 2002, 2003. I was like, what? John Caroll always had a team, man. They the Cavaliers, they always did well. I can remember looking back at when I was volunteering at County High, early 2000s, they actually had a state runner-up team. And they actually had some big names come through John Caroll and coach. Randy Hott. Everybody knows, hey, he's all caps Randy. If you're on the Grow Alabama Wrestling Board, you know all caps Randy. He welcomes all the new members. I wrestled Alabama 25 times a day. Randy, I love you, man. He was actually the coach at John Caroll at one time. So I had asked, and they said it didn't have a team. And they kind of politely said, hey, we've been interested in having a team. We just don't know where to get started, and we don't really have any funding. And I said, man, I'll do it for free. My son's going to be a Prince Peace. I'll volunteer, and I'll do it for free. And my wife was sitting right there. And, part of her, she's like, you're insane. You're crazy. But, we kind of formed a partnership, my wife and I. We said we were going to do it together. And we were going to try to bring things different and try to bring a lot of our experiences from the wrestling mat and other things that I've done, into wrestling. So that's kind of how we got started. Now, the funny part of this is they didn't believe me. And this is the story that you don't know. So John Caroll did not believe me. Years later, we found out that they said, hey, we get a lot of people that come in excited and tell us they're going to do things and they never follow through. We didn't actually expect you to do it. So I emailed them constantly. This is after I said I volunteer. Once my son was in school, I emailed him and I texted him. Dr. Montalto is the principal. He's awesome. Hey, little side note. I love all these side tangents. Dr. Montalto used to coach in Trussville Middle Schools, and he actually became the Trussville principal many years later. He was actually a wrestling coach. Jeff Saxon, man, one of our premier referees in Alabama, Jeff Saxon, was actually one of Dr. Montalto's wrestlers. So it's funny how all this kind of intertwines, right? So Dr. Montalto got a deal with Pelham High School. Their mats were already green, so it worked for John Caroll, we're green. So we actually purchased mats originally from Pelham High School. And I got to go over there and check them out. They were a little dead, but I was like, first year it'll work. And, so that's kind of how we got started is we had mats and we had an idea and we had a poster. And this poster, my wife made the poster. It had all the weight classes, and we couldn't fit John Caroll Wrestling. It was so big. So we went with JCW, which was kind of cool because we made it look like the old NWO. You remember from WCW days or ECW, kind of raw, kind of hardcore. And so we went with the JCW name, and that's kind of still stuck to this day. Yep, that's exactly how I feel when I look at it, Jackson. Without sleep for a couple of years, and I think in our lives, my wife and I were saying, we don't have enough parents yelling at us these days. Let's make sure we get them all yelling at us about their kids, and let's start a wrestling team. I think that's how the thought process went.
Awesome. So, COVID-19 has, people talk about how it's really affected a lot of programs, but, just talking to you prior, I would say that it's probably affected you guys the most. You guys only had 8 kids on the roster consistently. How did you kind of work through that?
I'm going to tell you the big effect it had on small schools. And this is tough for me. Coming from a program like Hoover, and back then we used to be called 6A. 6A was the biggest. And then volunteering at County High, of course, they were 6A. I was used to massive numbers. And I was used to a full wrestling room no matter what. When we first started going at John Caroll, we had to recruit with what we could get. So we went to every single football game, and we were out there. We had a booth set up by the stands, and we were talking to the kids. We were getting athletes. We were getting non-athletes. And we had a good many that started out our first year. And, we had some good success getting out on the mat and getting experience. When COVID-19 hit, what it really took away from a young, small school like us is it took away the ability to have an off season. So, of course, me being a Hoover guy, we support Skulls. And the Skulls is a club that's kind of making a comeback these days and getting going. And, we chose to support them. And the interesting thing with that is when COVID-19 stopped, our kids couldn't go to club anymore. Now, for other wrestlers throughout the state, what that probably meant is they didn't get to polish their skills. But our guys, they started on the mats in November. And, they wrestled through the season, through February, and my plan was for them to wrestle off season and be able to do workouts and conditioning and learn in the spring, learn in the summer, learn in the fall. And kind of the methodology that we think about off season. Off season is a funny word. We should really call it next season. because we move into the next season of freestyle, the next season of Greco, right? And the methodology is if you can get 20 matches in each one of those, it's like a season. So if you got 20 matches of folk style in the spring, 20 matches of freestyle, 20 matches of Greco, you have 60 matches under your belt in the off season. That's like having 3 bonus seasons. So you can take a freshman right there who's a freshman with 1 year experience or 1 season experience, if you will, get 20 matches, 20 matches, 20 matches, 60 total over the summer. That's like tripling their experience before they go to their sophomore year. That is what we missed. So not being able to have that opportunity, I think, hurt us. We were trying to do some virtual workouts. So we had this thing called Cavs Fit Club. We partnered with football. We partnered with soccer and baseball. And we were doing these online workout challenges. We were trying to get kids up and moving. So we were using Zoom, doing virtual workouts. We were using YouTube. And we're just trying to do things. If we couldn't be with our athletes during COVID-19, if we could at least get them moving, doing something. So we were trying to do that. Of course, when we got back to the season, there was a lot of pushback, man. We're a private school. And so there was a lot of concerns. Could we hit the mat safely? What could we do? And so my wife and I were finishing our PhDs. So we're both actually about to be Dr. Zito as well as Coach Zito. We're finishing communications. And we take that analytical approach to whatever we do. So we researched COVID-19. We researched wrestling. We saw what the state guidelines were going to be, and we wanted to exceed them to prove to the school that we could exist in COVID-19. So part of the things that we did, we sat down with all the parents, right? Look, hey, the Pella mat, it got us in the game. And we used to practice in the lunchroom back in the day. And that was tough. But we said, you know what? That's not going to be a safe COVID condition to practice in the lunchroom. It's also not the safest for concussion. I said, this old mat got some cracks in it. And I learned from Easy Flex, God, they were a tremendous resource. That, that's where bacteria hides in the cracks of the mats. And not everybody knows that, right? And so I learned that it could spread throughout the foam. So I knew the mat had to go. And I also learned a lot of different mopping techniques and things. Easy Flex, man, if y'all aren't working with them, I'm telling you, they are a top-notch company. They taught me so much about mat safety that I never knew. So we purchased, if you went to Super 32s last year, you saw it, the giant black mat. That's actually John Caroll's mat right now. So they cut us a deal. We did some fundraising with the parents, and we were able to purchase the mat. That was our first big step. Our second challenge was trying to find a place that was isolated that we could practice. So Coach Wendy, she had a brilliant idea. We saw these Halloween pop-up stores, these stores that pop up and, the Halloween store, you go in and get your costume and stuff, and they shut down at the end of the month. And we were trying to rent a retail space. And we were real close, man. We almost nailed it. We were almost next to the bookstore, next to the Galleria, the old Rhapsody building. We were almost there. That would have been really cool. We were almost in Bluff Park next to Piggly Wiggly, which the parents were excited because, they have like free wine samples on Tuesdays. So the parents were pumped about that. We were almost there, and we couldn't quite make it work. Out of all things, my dad, my parents were Panama City bop dancers, right? Panama City bop dancers. And they used to have these bop parties that were at a fire hall in Homewood. And my dad still had a contact for that. So I called the guy up, and he remembered the bop parties. He knew who my dad was. And we were able to cut a deal and have a community partnership with the Homewood Fire Association. It was Birmingham Firefighters Association in Homewood. And we actually practice in their facility. And we have become their grounds crew. We've become their cleaners. We clean the place. We clean up after parties and things for them. So it's become a great community partnership. And we needed that for COVID-19. We needed to be isolated. So we got the new mat, we got the new location, and we had the new mopping standards, and we came up with some other creative things. Man, 25 years of wrestling, 30 years of wrestling, I'd never thought of this. As wrestlers, man, we're nasty. We're disgusting. Let's just be honest. We do things like we're on the wrestling mat, we'll walk to the bathroom, which we've seen guys' bathrooms. We know what that's like. And then we'll walk back to the wrestling mat. And how disgusting is that? So we learned that to use Clorox wipes on the bottom of our shoes, or we would get, we got these surgical booties we would flip over our shoes. So if we stepped off the mats, we put these surgical booties on and, walked to the bathroom, took those off, threw them away, and came back on the mat. We used hand sanitizer. We did a lot of things. Hey, knock on wood, we were never quarantined this year. We never had a single kid catch COVID. At the matches, we used body wipes. Our wrestling cheerleaders would hand our wrestlers body wipes as they came off the mat, and we used body wipes. So we did all these extra steps, and I know other coaches thought they were crazy, man. We did the face mask until you stepped on the mat. I know people thought we were crazy, but we stayed healthy. Yes, we did have smaller numbers this year. The numbers we had stayed healthy. And that's one thing I'm very proud of. Man, coaches that lived through this time period, we almost deserve like a badge of honor because nobody has ever been through anything like what we just went through with COVID. And I think tensions were high between wrestlers. Tensions were high between families, between other schools. You had the unknown. You had schools canceling. You had you couldn't travel, then you could travel. Then you had state was modified, no sectionals. You look at all the things that went into COVID and you say, hey, how did that affect your program? Man, we could have a 3-hour show talking about just that right there. But there it is in a nutshell of how we kind of did it at John Caroll and how we succeeded in as far as, being safe from staying safe from COVID-19 and being able to be competitive on the mat. So that's your big circle, man. That's what it is.
Now, one thing I also want to talk about was you guys have, in just 2 years, you guys had, your first 2 state qualifiers since, what do we say, 2003? That's a huge accomplishment in just 2 years. And it's not like these kids have been wrestling, the last 7 years of their lives. So.
And that's what was cool is, when we held that meeting a couple years ago, so once we said we were going to start a wrestling team, the school set us up a meeting. And it was in the library. And I set up, they have a huge, 85-inch screen. I love their screen. I love doing presentations on it. And I had to tell the school, because nobody was familiar, what wrestling was. Man, so many people thought it was pro wrestling or they thought it was MMA. I had parents in there, is my son going to get choked out? We step out in this sport. I'm like, no, that's UFC. I love that. That's not what we're doing. So we had to tell the school, what wrestling was, who we were, and what we were going to do. And John Caroll, athletically is different than what we had at Hoover High School. Hoover High School, especially, with their reputation, it's not, did you win state? It's how many times have you won state? How many times has your wrestling team won state? How many times has your football team won state? Everything is on a state championship level. So my brain still thinks of that consistent win cycle. That's the way, my brain thinks. And I'm never going to be able to shed that Hoover mentality of you should expect to win. You should train to win. That's one great thing that wrestling, especially at Hoover, gave me in my life. Maybe that's why I'm going to be Dr. Zito. Whatever you do, you expect to train, you expect to earn it, you expect to win. That winner's mentality. And carrying that into John Caroll, especially with a new sport, they're like, oh, we've heard this before. New sports come in, and we're just happy our kids are out there. I'm like, look, I'm happy your kids are out there, but I'm going to make a promise. If you will follow everything that I say, and you will follow the plan that Coach Zito, my wife, Coach Zito, and Coach Zito and I lay out, if you follow what we say, I promise we will get your kids qualified for the state championship. And I'm proud to do it in our second season, especially with not having training during COVID last year. So you're really talking about a bunch of kids that we rolled out mats in a lunchroom and had their first season. We had a gap with no off season allowed. And then we came back and we had a late start due to COVID. We had a delayed start, but to come back and to power through and get 2 kids in the state, and we couldn't be more proud. And not to mention that we started girls wrestling and we had 2 girls into the state tournament too, the girls state tournament. And so we're really talking about 4 state qualifiers. And John Caroll, the last time they were at state was 2003, and it was 1 guy. So, we're pretty excited about where we're going, how hard we're going to work. In my opinion, this is the same thing I told the team right at the end of the season. If we want to put more guys in the state, it's going to take even more work. This state, Alabama, man, we have gone wrestling crazy, man. And the level of competition each year gets higher and higher. All the clubs that you have around that, it just it's up. Everything is growing. Everything is bigger. This was the expectation last year. This is the expectation this year. Guys have to consistently train around the clock to be a top-notch athlete. It is what it is. And you can either keep up or you can get out. And that's what I told our kids. I'm like, look, we're moving into year 3. If you want to go to state and you want to turn this into a competitive program, these are the steps we have to follow. If we don't follow those things, then we have to somewhat be okay with mediocre results. And I'm not okay with mediocre results. And so that's, I know that sounds a little hardcore, and especially for a Catholic private school, but a lot of Catholic private schools win. Notre Dame still has the expectation. They don't beat Bama in football, but they still have the expectation to win, right? So I kind of bring a little bit of that Hoover edge, a little Hoover hardcore, if you will, into the Catholic school systems. But I think it's good, and I think it's good to inspire kids to tell them if you work hard, and you do all the right things, kind of the Bear Bryant methodology, right? If you follow the plan and you work hard and you do everything that you should do and you work at your absolute best, you have the chance to move on to the next level.
Of course. Now, I had Coach Pike on here earlier this year, and I asked him the same question. I said, "What's it like coaching your son?" You know, that's a hard thing. And he's been coaching for close to
Oh,
10
wow.
years now. And I kind of want to get what it's like as a, being fresh into coaching and coaching.
$1 million question right there. Wow. If you could, man, I wish I had Coach Wendy. When you interview her, talk to her about this because she has a fun perspective on it. When my son did a little bit of Pee-wees. He did like 6 weeks of Pee-wees. And my teammates at the time who were running the club said, hey, welcome back, but hey, go be dad. You're going to be dad in the stands, right? So I was dad in the stand. And then you just like, you're out there, you're cheering, but you're wanting to holler moves. And I remember my kid's first match. This is funny because he was at off-season or club or whatever we call Pee-wees at the time. And it was Alabama Wrestling Club, which was Rod Gaddy, which Rod and I go all the way back to high school together. He was at Vestavia, I was at Hoover. So we have a long-standing rivalry. Rod, this is Alabama Wrestling Club. His kid was going to wrestle my kid. And we didn't know they were having a match. At the time, Wendy was helping stretch the little bitty Pee-wee. So we weren't involved in coaching, but we could help back then. She was helping stretch because of her dance background and stuff. And I was just helping monitor and corral kids. Well, somebody came running and said, hey, your kid's about to have a match in the main gym. So we both took off sprinting and grabbed the cell phone. And I know I lost my first match ever badly. I want to say it was against Irwin, 1989 in 7th grade. Maybe Kevin Kaiser. Hey, Kevin, where are you, man? I haven't heard from you in years, right? But so I'm watching my son, and he goes out there, and this makes it even more proud for me. It was in Hoover's gym and beat Rod's guy. And I was like, wow, my kid just won his first match. I remember sitting in the stands and just wanting to get hands on. I guess, the wrestler never leaves you, and it's hard to be dad sitting in the stand. So it was hard for me at the very beginning to turn over his training. And at certain places that he wrestled, there are great coaches in the state, and then there are great coaches that run programs, and then they are concentrating on great kids, and then they have okay coaches and okay people concentrating on other ones. And I was watching what was going on, and that competitor in me just kind of lit fire. I was like, what is this guy doing? Why is this kid why are they doing drag steps for an hour and a half with a youth class? And the kids are not paying attention. I was like, I see the value of a drag step, but come on, an hour and a half in a youth class, we need to be drilling. We need to be doing the right things for these kids. I was watching these kids go out to the youth competitions and thinking it was sumo, thinking you're supposed to push them out of the circle. They were unprepared to go out onto the mat, and I just remember being steamed. And even watching other places that my son wrestled before he transferred to John Caroll, it was that, what is this coach doing kind of thought process? Why is he doing this? So when I volunteered at John Caroll, it was really kind of putting, what's the saying? You put your money where your mouth is. And it was stepping back and going, I can do this. And that was a hard part. That was a very hard thing, is going, all right, I'm going to be coach dad and I can do this. And I'm going to coach a team and I'm going to coach my son. Now, how my son fits into it, my wife will tell you and the other wrestlers will tell you, I am harder on him than I am the other wrestlers. I probably lay into him in practice more than I should. And I definitely raise my voice maybe a little bit more. My son, he'll tell you that I do with the other wrestlers, but I have to have him be the model of what good practice is. I can't have him slacking. I don't ever want to appear that I'm playing favorites. And that's the great thing about wrestling is there's wrestle-offs. And, if you can beat the number one guy in your weight class, you are the starter. So it's hard for people to say that, oh, your son is starting just because you're the coach. It's not because I'm the coach. It's because he's the number one guy in his weight class. But I definitely do jump him for behavior and things. But I want to say in practice that I show everybody the same stuff. Now, when we get one-on-one at home, yeah, I definitely, when I'm one-on-one and I'm away from my team, I definitely show him other stuff. And I'm his dad. I could do that. I don't think that I have to step away from ever being my son's dad and ever helping him extra than what I do for the team. I give the team the same information as far as camps, off-season, all that kind of stuff. I give the team that kind of stuff. But there's times when my son and I will sit down and we'll watch. I'll say, hey, this is Sam Latona. Hey, his dad, Norm, you know him from Tournament Truck. He wrestled at John Caroll. Look at him winning ACC. Let's watch this together. There's times when we are father and son, and we both enjoy wrestling and we watch. There's times out on the mat that when I'm in the coach's chair, that I probably get a little bit more passionate in his matches. Dad comes out. He's a different generation. He responds to different things. Me being the old Hoover guy, I'm used to the, what are you, an idiot? What'd you do that for? I'm used to that kind of, that kind of beat down, if you will. And that's what motivated us. No, sir, I'm not an idiot. I'm going to work harder. This generation responds differently. And I'm learning from feedback from my son. That's right. I got to get feedback from my son and some butt chewings from my wife that he communicates differently than I do. And the passion that I put behind the chair, out of the chair, and that he doesn't respond to that. I've learned that I have to coach him on the side of the mat. Next season, you're going to see this if you've seen me. Next season, I'm going to have to coach him a little different. He's let me know what communication needs for him. So coaching your son, you have to talk to him, man. You have to talk to him. So my son is 14. He's got his own way of doing things, and I have to respect that, and I have to respect his communication, and I have to learn to coach him as Coach Dad. Off season's tricky because I have to go sit against the wall and I've got my laptop, I'm doing my work and stuff, and I have to watch other people coach him. But like when Coach Rohr, man, Sky Rohr had him last night at Skulls, and Coach Rohr was throwing him around the same way he threw me around. And my son walked off going, that was the hardest 6 minutes I've ever had in my life. My teammate Stuart Holt has had a chance to work with my kid. So I've been real excited to see him work with my teammates, my former coach, and things like that. And it's I like him having the consistency of where I learned from and working with them. But at the same time, I'm going to take him to a wide variety of coaches. I've talked to a lot of coaches in the area. I want to take him I just want to take him across the state. Hey, go from here from this guy. Let's go here from this guy. I want you to get this guy's style. Let's find the best of this, the best of this, the best of that. One of the problems we have in the state of Alabama is we're so divided into clubs. We ought to call them cliques. We shouldn't call them clubs anymore, because we don't operate as a group, and we should. We operate too much as there's this clique that is this club, and there's this clique that's that club. And if you go to the different places to gain knowledge, you're what do we call it, a club hopper. We used to call it in college, too, when you would bounce club to club. Not wrestling club, but bars, right? But now we call it club hopping when you're going club to club. I don't see that as a negative, because I think when I was in high school, we didn't have wrestling clubs. We didn't have wrestling coaches. I would have loved this opportunity. And I think it's a phenomenal opportunity to be able to take my son and go, okay, let's go work with Shad at Thompson. Let's go work. Eli just took over Birmingham Wrestling. Let's go work one time with him. Let's go over to Tuscaloosa. They got this guy named Andre that's running the new club. Let's go over here. Hey, River Rats, man. They're running a thing in a couple of weeks. We're going to go hang out with the River Rats. We travel a lot. We have an RV. We go out in the summer. We take trips. We're going to go down and see Champion.al down in Mobile area, man. We're going to hang out with the Beach Bombers and Fort Walton Tested. So I want to see all these places, take my kid to them, and let him have all those private lessons. So what's it like to be Coach Dad? As much as I want to put my hands and, you want to make him like a mini me or whatever, I want him to have influences and opportunities I didn't have. And I have to remember that he is who he is on the mat. He's not me. And if he wins, it's him. And if he loses, it's not me. That's a difficult thing. I was just discussing this with a good friend of mine whose son is in Pee Wee wrestling. And he's like, man, my son didn't shoot. My son got pinned the other day. I was like, man, it's okay. It's okay. Your son's going to lose, and he's going to learn to win from losing. That's not you on the mat. I know you were a champion, but your son getting pinned in Pee Wee is on the mat. And that's something as dads we have to take away. Yes, it is physically a piece of us biologically, but that's not us on the mat. And we got to let our kids kind of grow with their wrestling journey, if you will. And, man, all my answers do this.
for sure. And I'm going to ask Coach Wendy when I interview her as well. What's it like being part of the integral girls team task force, and how
man. What an honor that was. So it's funny how much happens on Facebook these days. When the state first said, hey, we're going to have guys state, we had 2 girl wrestlers, and they had their heart set on girl state. And I just put a Facebook post, hey, what about girl state? What happened out there? Next thing I know, I got all these private messages, and they were looking for a location, and they had some struggles. They're trying to get things going. And that's where Wendy and I kind of popped in. In our background and things that we've done in our life, we've hosted a lot of special events and we've produced a lot of different entertainment events and such. So I was like, okay, I can find us a place, man. I can do it. I can have this happen. So what people don't know about Girls State is the second that we kind of came on with that, we tried to get creative. That's just the way we operate. I was this close to getting the Alabama Theater for Girls State, which would have looked totally different and felt totally different than anything we've ever held. And in my mind, I was thinking that Girls State has to look different. It has to feel different. It has to be a different product so it attracts the right amount of attention. And if it didn't attract the right amount of attention, it might not get over with everybody. So I was really trying to get the Alabama Theater. We couldn't make the stage lineup, even with Tournament Truck, trying to use Norm and Ben, trying to find a way to make their mats work. With regulation, we couldn't fit it up there on that stage. But I was real close to being able to make that happen. Man, I called the Finley Center. We almost had that, the Watermark and Bessemer. So I was trying to get creative, and I went back to my roots. I gave Hoover High School a call, and we were able to work it out. And fortunately, we were able to have Girls State right there at Hoover High School. So the biggest impact that we did first was be able to get a place where to have it. And then Sean and I didn't know Sean previous. I knew of Sean. But Sean and I, we didn't know each other personally. And, to be able to work with Thompson High School and to be able to put that together, he really ran the tournament aspects and the task force was great. They're like, hey, can you handle some of the media stuff? So Wendy and I sent out press releases, and that's how we got a lot of the coverage with, AL.com, Hoover Sun, Homewood Star, Fox 6 News. Fox 6 came up to the fire hall and did a whole piece on our two girls. So we're really excited about that. And just to be on the conference calls and meet like Sally with Wrestle Like a Girl, and to meet Hannah that was our first state champion. Hannah was first state champion, Jackson. She's around your age, right? What's Hannah's contribution? She was first.
She was the first girl to go to state.
Go to state, right?
Boys State, yeah.
And to go to Boys State and to meet her and to get involved. And a lot of that happened in what I call my dark area of wrestling when I wasn't around, and those people's contributions. But to be able to catch up on that and see all the contributions they had. And when I was watching my son in Pee Wee's back when, he was doing that little 6-week thing, and we saw Lena. We saw her in Pee Wee's. We saw Alexis, the wrestles down at Beauregard. We saw a lot of these girls that are our stars now. We saw them in Pee Wee's. And I recognized back then, I was like, man, those girls right there, they're workers. They're workers. They're going to do something big. And to be able to help produce an event and to be part of such a great group of people with the Girls Task Force to be able to get that event going was just amazing. And we do Zoom calls, we do conference calls, man. We text back and forth. I can look on my text right now, and I've got like Jason Eldridge, Dade, her father. We're talking about the big event he's got coming up. He's got a college coach coming to Wetumpka. And, I'm just looking at, just scrolling my list right here. Girls State, I'm going to tell you something. The people on the task force, we talk about it constantly. There's always, Dr. Julie Heaton. I hadn't even said her death, with the Daphne program. I've got 3 texts right here. We all, it's a year-long thing. We all talk about it. And I think we all share the passion to grow the product. And for Wendy, I keep turning like she's right here beside me. But for Wendy, she is Alabama's first girls coach. And at Girls State, she actually chaired the matches herself. I was busy running my mouth on the microphone. I was doing the announcing. Track wrestling went down, and we had to let people know where to go. So I just got on the mic and did it old school, right? And Wendy actually went out and coached our girls. And then at Guy State, she was there coaching our guys too, and I was there next to her. So she's very much a coach. She, coming from a dance background, she's been working on the mats, and she's been working on her wrestling, and there's things that she can get hands-on with the girls, and there's a comfort level between her and the girls and a trust. And it's not that they don't trust us as guys, but there's something different about a girl getting down on the mats. So even though she doesn't have a wrestling background, man, she's been around the sport. When I volunteered at Tuscaloosa County High back in the early 2000s, before Wendy and I got married, she was my girlfriend. And she went to every single match, every single practice at Tuscaloosa County High. And so she's been around this. She's not just been a wrestling mom. She's been at every practice, every match for everything we've ever done, whether it's Tuscaloosa County High, Pee Wee. She helped Coach Gadosh when she was teaching the kids to flip and roll. I mean, she has made an impact everywhere she's been. So to be a female coach and to make the impact she's making, being the first female coach, that's really cool. And she's going to go to a lot of these workshops. Like she's going down to Jason Eldridge. She's going to go down to Wetumpka, and she's going to take class because she wants to be there with the girls. She loves this girls movement. It's tough because as a coach, you can't interact with them in the HSAA rules. crazy. But she wants to be there to absorb the material so she can pass it on to our girls later. So she's getting her training now. And that's the cool thing about wrestlers. We never stop training. We never stop learning. When we stop learning, that's a problem. We should always be open to new ideas.
Of course. Now, what I've seen a little bit on Facebook, and this will probably go on my thing as I did this thing called the weigh-in, where a coach weighs in on a topic. And I want to ask you, it's been kind of on Facebook a little bit, is they don't allow club wrestling in season. And that's mostly because there's not a lot of sometimes they don't let the kids sorry. I lost my train of thought there.
Now, I get where you're going with it. That is a hot topic. Should we let our high school kids go to club wrestling instead of coming to high school practice or after high school practice? Man, what a double-edged sword. Minshew, man, I love you. I love you. I'm talking about the dad. I'm not talking about Jason. I'm talking about the dad. What's the dad? Is it Jason and Tim? I'm trying to remember which one the dad is. The dad Tim?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Tim, I love you, man. And I know you got this out on Facebook, and I know everybody's chiming in on one side or the other, and I'm not trying to bash you because I love what you're saying. But at the same time, and I'm going to put this out there, at this current time, I don't think it's the right move for the sport. Now, and I'm going to talk about why. Now, I understand the value. I understand the value that you've got these terrific clubs around Birmingham or around whatever city you're in, right? And I understand being from a smaller program that you don't always have kids to drill with. A lot of times, my 120's got to drill with my 140. I mean, it's just what it is. A lot of times my 160 is drilling with the 182. You don't always have guys that line up. Or maybe you've got a lack of experience in the room. And that would be the value of being able to go to clubs in the during the season. Would be that your kids could drill with different people from other schools. Now I'm going to tell you the downside. Here's the downside. I feel that there are opportunities financially that some people have that others don't. I'm a big fan of all the upstart that we have, especially with schools from the inner city. You look at what's going on with Jackson Olin, man, they got some hot stuff happening. They got tremendous athletes. You look at Carver, that's up and coming, man. They put a lot of kids in state. I think Xavier Larry, I think he even placed in state. Man, what a tremendous athlete, And you look at, and I'm not trying to say financially who could do what, and I'm not trying to call out anybody individually. I'm just saying that there are opportunities within the inner city that maybe financially would not line up with the monthly fees that we pay to the clubs. When we pay for our clubs, that's a large chunk that we're paying, man. $80 to $120 depending. And if you're saying that the kids that can get ahead are the ones that can financially afford it, that's where I have an issue, because I want to make wrestling available for everybody. Now, if we were to try to figure out a way to where, families, I don't know if there was a scholarship or what you could work, and it'd have to be through the HSA or whatever, to be able to go to the clubs, maybe I would revisit my opinion. But I feel it's going to lock out a lot of families. It's also going to lock out things like, can you skip your high school practice and go straight to club practice? What if your kids do other activities? What if they're on the Science Olympiad team and that's after wrestling? Or my kid does karate and judo. Is he going to have to skip that and now have to go to club? And if he doesn't go to club during season, will he fall behind? So I think it opens up a lot of questions more than I want my kid to be able to drill with better wrestlers during the season. So something we learned from COVID. People can agree or they can disagree. They can get mad at me or whatever. I love the quad matches. I love them. You get 4 matches, maybe you get an exhibition, 5 matches per kid everywhere you go. I love this. It does take more money. You got to pay the refs and things like that. But if you schedule 3 quads during the week, you're looking at 12 to 15 matches your kid can get a week. Now, maybe you don't have somebody for your kid to drill at your school. But if you do, a couple of quads and a tournament on the weekend or something like that, you're getting enough matches. That's all. Yes, it's not drilling, but it's almost like drilling. You can coach it in. It is possible. You have to challenge yourself as a coach on those days that you are not wrestling against other schools of what to practice and how to balance that. But you can almost use those style matches as your live. And when you don't have 4 guys in a weight class, you can't always go live in a practice. That's a struggle we have. And coming from Hoover, I remember shark drill, 1 on 2. Okay, now 1 on 3. Now 1 on 4. We do that shark drill where you rotate. Well, when you're at a school like John Caroll and you don't have 4 guys in a weight class, you're like 106, 122. You know, 138. Well, do what you can. 138. Don't kill the 106. You know, so you have to get creative. So having those quad matches where you can go up against 3 other schools, you know, you get usually 1 or 2 exhibitions, so you leave 4 or 5 matches. That almost becomes your live drilling. So I like that better than the thought of going to a club during the season. And there's something about teams too. I like the team bonding. I'm still old school. I want to see my team bind, and I don't want the team to be a piece of this club, a piece of this club. And how do you mandate? That's another question, Jackson. How do you mandate? Do you say, hey, we can only support this club during in season? Off season, you can go anywhere, but this in season, you can only go here. And what if I got kids that got the funds and kids that don't? It just, there's so many questions that I don't think it's the right move. I think the thought process behind it is correct. I love what the thoughts are, but I don't think it's the right move right now. And the same with and I'm gonna flip, and this is gonna make people angry, especially the club owners, and y'all are terrific. I love y'all all, but it's gonna make them mad. I think we should do something about wrestling and the off season as well. And because I love supporting the clubs, and I love that we get, what do we get? The 1 hour twice a week, split your roster, the HSAA rules. But I think we should revisit that. Not every area has a club. Not every area do the kids have the access to be able to pay to go to the club. Not every area has a club nearby. I'm thinking of some ones down in Mobile. I remember them telling me that, the nearest club's an hour and a half away. So you're limiting some of those kids from being able to wrestle in the offseason. I'm not saying we got to run full practices in the offseason, but maybe give us a little bit more time. And the split the roster thing, man, I got that in football. That works. Hey, you work with the offense today. You work with the defense. But, in wrestling, hey, you can only work with 5 wrestlers today. If you've only got a team of 7, a team of 8, so we're going to leave these 3 out today. We're going to work with these 5 for an hour. It just that doesn't work. We need to have a wrestling approach to what the coaches are allowed to do and do what's best to grow wrestling. And let's get out of our basketball, football, baseball mentality. And I'm not trashing the HSAA. Not, man. I love them. That's off to what they did with the state tournament this year. We had state. That's tremendous. But I think we need to take a wrestling approach to what coaches are allowed to do and then figure out a way to have that coexist to what we're allowed to do in the clubs. And I'm not want to take anything away from the clubs. I just want to give coaches, especially on the outskirts and in small, young schools, the right opportunity to work with their people.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all the questions I have for you today. I appreciate you letting me do this interview with you. It was awesome.
Oh, man. You see, I just saw Dr. Coach Wendy walk by right here. So, we both got to get back to our PhD stuff. We will be done with it before wrestling season, so we could drop the all but dissertation and future Dr. Coach. So we will both be Dr. Coach Zito next year, man. And we're excited. Just as COVID, God, I hope everything is going the right direction with that. And I hope we can get back to regular, because we're already booking tournaments, man. I got coaches calling, we're booking tournaments, and I'm already excited for next season. I mean, I got to wait till November because we just finished and I'm ready to go. Now my sleep schedule isn't ready to go. I'm behind. I haven't even, I got to do some laundry. Got to get all that done, but I'm already excited to get moving for next season. We're having our team meeting. We're recruiting new people so we can have new wrestlers. And so I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the state of Alabama. It's good to be back home on the mats, and I appreciate everybody welcoming Wendy into the industry and the impact we're trying to make with girls wrestling and everything we're doing with John Caroll.
Awesome.